But shouldn't you play it safe, get another job first?
What does that mean?
And then line everything up and then make that transition? Why jeopardize it without that smooth transition that society generally says is the prudent?
If you subscribe to that, why stay with somebody who tortures you? Why do you stay in the presence of somebody who doesn't just dilute but taints your entire vibe to live and live well? If you're gonna go down that road, there is no end to the dystopian corporate make it work vibe that opens up. And I have to keep my sobriety as an artist. I'm that far removed to, okay, if that's what we're dealing with, then why don't we justify removing every discomfort from my life?
Hello, everyone. This is Lu-Shien Tan with Q's Blue World, bringing you another episode of You've Got to Meet. Today, we are getting an update from Lu-Shien Tan, my co-host and my partner in crime in Q's Blue World, co-host of Between the Lines. So, we're documenting a new chapter of Lu-Shien's life. Lu-Shien, tell us what your last couple of years have been and where you headed.
So I was a director of admissions, recruiting international high school students from 23 countries. And most recently, I ended employment at my current school just after the peak of my career there.
What?
So after establishing my recruiting strategy and going through the pandemic beyond surviving but finding ways to message, I went ahead and implemented the new strategy just before resigning. And I did so because I'm one of those where if I don't find any more potential to learn, I'm ready to move on. And
were you ready? What else were you doing before that gave you the confidence to say you're done with this stage?
I think a lot of the impetus was going on vacation after 5 years, for the first time in 5 years. And I don't just vegetate when I vacate. I was doing a lot of reflection, thinking about, am I really enjoying what I'm doing right now? Is this taking me on a path for greater creativity and expression? Am I developing skills? And the short answer is, I felt divergent. On one hand, I was doing an exceptional job in my career and numbers were doing well given all the circumstances. But I was also escaping in a completely divergent path as an artist creative. And I needed to do something different to realign.
I remember you telling me that one of your friends said, "Oh my God, you are a storyteller."
And I should make movies.
Tell us a little bit about your storytelling and movie making videography that you've been doing.
So the journey began probably 4 years ago 5 years ago when I began work at this school I just left. And I realized very quickly there was not much in video presence. So the first step was looking for somebody who could capture video, and there was not. So I became a better artist with the video camera. I had to learn how to be a good videographer. The second thing is editing, because nobody around me knew how to do it. So I had to find a really good video editor who was also an artist at heart. And what I didn't expect to have found was somebody who understood that vibe and could extrapolate and give very bold inputs of their own without any direction. So that was key number 2. So between those 2 steps, I learned how to capture good raw video and then what editing could look like. And I think from there, I had an opportunity to learn to fly a drone, and it gave me a completely different perspective, camera angle to work with. And then that gave me the confidence to start editing that. And at the same time, the school gifted me with an amazing MacBook Air M1 chip, 16 gigabyte, huge hard drive. And I was like, it edits video as well. And I learned something very quickly. When you have a rig and a piece of software that's intuitive to you, whether it's super capable or not, it will not distract you. You're not distracted with ooh, I've never clicked this before. What are these options? You stay in a creative moment, and then you start to produce things that, on reflection, going, how did I do that? And it's because the synergistic creative spark is being translated, and it just flows. And I know I've got something really important artistically when on reflection I sleep on it and review my draft. I realize I got something that exceeds even my vision.
Tell me a story about when it didn't work, when you saw your work being offered in a different setting and it was a violation of what your creative vision was.
So I was commissioned to provide footage of a dystopian nature, something that epitomizes C.S. Lewis's Wasteland. No, it wasn't C.S. Lewis.
T.S. Eliot.
T.S. Eliot, thank you. T.S. Eliot's Wasteland. So I took out the drone and flew it during the winter time over ice floes in our estuarine river, over snow-covered train tracks. But I found a music track that I could set it to so that the foreboding presence was timed with the cutscenes. And it just built the tension. And very simple effects so that you're not dazzled and bamboozled, but just that stark tension that was building. I was really proud of it because it was more than just raw footage. It was a direction. And to my horror, the person who took it didn't even use the soundtrack, didn't even use a soundtrack that matched my cuts. It was just very randomly inserted like B-roll. And frankly speaking, I was pretty disappointed.
And that's where you probably discovered that it was important for you to express your voice. And the dissonance that you were describing in your work started to shift as well because of that strong direction in your life. That's something that I observed in your life.
I think that's when I discovered I actually was a filmmaker, because it wasn't about being better or not. It's not what I was trying to communicate. And I felt so strongly about what I was communicating that I wanted to become better and be able to tell the story I wanted to tell the way I wanted it told. No commentary or editorial perspective injected, because I strive to be authentic and honest.
And now it is generalizing into your life. So in some ways, the change comes at a time where I think you've told me that you feel ready to tell the story of your life and what you want to do.
I never thought of it that way. So you're purporting that my alignment artistically precipitated the change in the way I do work and make money.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Fascinating. So yeah, that is certainly coincides, but I did sense a dissonance and a lack of congruent alignment with how I did work. I just didn't feel like it belonged. I didn't feel part of the community. The things that used to energize me and I was proud of was just kind of lackluster, and that's for you. That's your party. It's not mine. It's not my story anymore. And so it kind of adds to the notion of I'm ready to go.
But shouldn't you play it safe, get another job first?
What does that mean?
And then line everything up and then make that transition. Why jeopardize it without that smooth transition that society generally says is the prudent
if you subscribe to that, why stay with somebody who tortures you? Why do you stay in the presence of somebody who doesn't just dilute but taints your entire vibe to live and live well? If you're gonna go down that road, there is no end to the dystopian corporate make it work vibe that opens up. And I have to keep my sobriety as an artist. I'm that far removed to, okay, if that's what we're dealing with, then why don't we justify removing every discomfort from my life, which I've done very well in the past.
Playing it safe sometimes means you don't have enough faith in yourself.
And then you don't do anything significant worth telling. And I think of so many ironic times in my life where I had everything going for me, everything, and I'm miserable. And it's because of that, right? So, playing it safe equals death from me, and why extend and prolong an existence without life?
People that succeed attain the goal that they would attain it anyway if it mattered nothing to their career. If it meant everything to their life, that's why they attain the goal.
Yeah. So I have a theory. When we buy work, whether it's a concert, piece of visual art, you're not buying the image or the sound. You're buying someone's life work, someone's expression and process, because that's why we don't subscribe to some manufactured pop artist. It's too fake. It doesn't resonate with passion and authenticity and risk.
That's what made Fableman so good.
And so inherently, my story right now is compelling to many because it took courage, and it continues to be treacherous.
And what I'm seeing is it's not just art is in this compartment, work is this compartment. It's integrating. Your life is less and less dissonant and disparate because this is now important to you.
And I'm not even doing the avant-garde, I'm gonna suffer and torture myself. No, you do not need pain to be an artist, but pain is an amazing ingredient that when it happens, it usually means some external entity wants to apply some pressure to bring something to the surface. That's my theory on that. But yeah, the integration is critical because then I can express it so many other ways without confinement.
Experiencing pain gives you nothing. Recovering from pain is everything.
Well said. So yes, that points out the difference between people who wallow in pain and they're irritating as hell versus the hero story of somebody who's been through hell and back and continues even though it's incredibly painful and uncomfortable, and you go, why? Because it gives them strength. The recovery, the I will not die this way, that's why we are energized. That's inspiring. We paid lots of money for that.
So, as you look into the months ahead of you, we know that there are no guarantees, but what are some things that that you have experienced as you looked to your future, as you plan, as you take your next steps? How does it feel? What does it smell like? What does it look like? What does it sound like to you?
There is one guarantee. I can guarantee that I continue the journey. I can guarantee that I'll be present and reflect. But in terms of outcomes, no. Obviously, nobody can guarantee outcomes. But I am anteing up really big because I expect superlative results. That's something that is becoming more apparent about me in terms of how I live life. I don't need mediocre results because they're not motivating to me. I want superlative results, so I'm willing to expend the energy, time, and effort to move heaven and hell aside so that I can have one shot at that, because it's freaking worth it. And it's exciting. It's the climb the mountain. Why? Because you get stronger, because you see better, because you are more humble, humiliated when you come down, and that's a good thing.
Wait a minute. Humiliated? And that's a good thing?
Because you have no voice distracting you from what's being said out there. You hear it without the narrative. So I think the next few months are going to be about that. And I feel currently at peace with that. There have been moments of just a few days ago when I'm going, what the hell am I doing? Are you kidding me? I just folded my hand right before the final cards are revealed. But I already knew I didn't want to continue that hand. So I proactively moved on. So there are times when I go, what the hell did you just do? Nobody would have criticized you for continuing, whereas practically all of them are having doubts that I'm sober right now. Except that within me, there's this ridiculous celebration of, yeah, you wanna continue and see what's around the corner. And that's sufficiently life-giving for me to take those extra steps. That's just it. It's inherently, I'm curious. I'm inherently energized.
It's like a Sun Tzu thing. You know, a battle won is one perhaps that you didn't fight.
And it's anticlimactic and not satisfying as the near win battle or I try battle, where you're proud of you and your team going, we did our best. We did more than we expected, and we're stronger for it. And you cheer the apparent loss.
Yeah.
It's paradoxical, but it's real, right? You feel it. You're not depending on your audience to provide the affirmation.
Did you ever see Glenn Ross? It's all these salesmen, and it's such a poignant scene. He's basically saying, you know, what you win for, you know, in the first place, and he says second place is a set of steak knives. So it's basically, you know, your second place doesn't mean shit.
By the way, in our audience today, we have Joe Corral, who is offering his...
I'm kibitzing in the corner.
Yes, he's doing that. So if you hear that voice, it's not me with, a voice modulator.
It's not AI, at least not yet.
All right. Now, where are you actually physically going and why?
So I left Maine, where my last place of employment was. I'm currently in Arizona, where we're inhumanely baked, if not for the wonderful air conditioning provided by Joe. And on Monday, I fly to Manila, Philippines.
Why Southeast Asia?
Because in my global travels, where I looped around the world several times a year, hitting 20 to 23 countries each loop, I'm continuously surprised by two key places. Brazil, because of their ability to set aside whatever drama is going on in their life and party with music turned on and seconds later. And Thailand, because despite how much they are abused, they're incredibly kind and choose to be gracious and warm. And now Philippines, because not only do they have the reputation of one of the most friendly countries in the world, they're more fluent in English, and that helps me communicate very much more authentically without Google Translate and awkwardness.
Thank you, U.S. Army.
Two, they are Catholic, which means their value systems are much more familiar. And three, they are not beyond warm and friendly. They are willing to be transparent. And unlike the Thais, the mere outward initial impression hides a very playful nature under there, whereas the Thais are overall a little bit timid and conservative. So those factors make for I think, a lot of excitement and promise of discovery.
Yes, and we look forward to seeing what your adventures bring you, and also a lot of new food, right?
Oh yeah, the reality is I have wrapped my brain around many world cultures and their food. That's how I access culture. I like to eat their food, the street food especially, meet some locals and pick their brains about all kinds of things. Maybe even learn a few phrases of their language, but it's the food.
Yes, and I remember the first time we went to the Philippines years ago. Wasn't it when we were introduced to jazz music and
Yeah.
live music? I don't think we ever went to a concert before then.
And it wasn't even the genre of music because I was so young that I didn't have a music appreciation, but it was that I could understand what they were communicating from their heart by the way they were singing. That was unnervingly cool. And I realized that music transcended culture and age and language, that you could really connect with someone through the music and the way you're expressing it. And that was the Philippines, and that was 3 decades ago. But it still burns brightly, and I want to revisit that. So my first stop is in Makati, just a live music hotspot of the amazing Metro Manila. Excited.
So that wasn't the only time that we went to the Philippines.
Mhm.
I want you to tell us about. This one's not a fun story.
Oh, I know where you're going.
Cebu. Typhoon. And we didn't even know it.
So this was when I was a young adult. And that was actually more like 25, 30 years ago, when the first time was actually 35 years ago. But that's not important. What's important is, as silly tourists, we approached Cebu on a Category 3 typhoon, thinking that based on Hong Kong ratings, Category 3 out of 5, that's just kind of a medium typhoon. No, Category 3 is actually the strongest you can get in the Philippines. And we argued way too much and obnoxiously as entitled tourists with the front desk about not getting a beachfront chalet, only to realize later why they were blessing us despite our obtuseness. Foreshadowing. We went to dinner, and once again, the van driver, who was found by the hotel, insisted he stay with us because it will be difficult to get a ride back given the conditions. Mid-dinner, the lights went out. 15 minutes later, we were shooed out hurriedly, frantically, as the wind started gusting outside. The van driver, Dale, did his best to drive the buffeting van down the coastal road towards our hotel as waves lapped across the road and palm fronds were being blown down. And just minutes away from our beachfront resort, we encountered a large enough tree to have fallen down with the wind across the entire two-lane highway, extending into the roadside, the shoulder on the other side. And as the adults were arguing about what to do because there's no turning back and no alternative
You
around,
were not a young adult, Lu-Shien. You were a teenager, a young one. I remember that you were a kid still.
Hmm.
This was earlier.
So I had the audacity to step out of the van, and the adults suddenly stopped arguing, going, "What the hell are you doing?" I says, "I think I need to do this." And a hush came over the van as I stepped out, leaned against one of the branches of the tree, and dragged it against the wind and pulled it aside. Just climbed back in, sat down, and the driver's jaw was just dropped, and he started the van, and we drove back. We get to the resort, and the storm surge had overtaken the beachfront chalets, ergo argument with reception.
Luggage was floating outside.
And there were frantic cries from a German family, I believe, who were gathering the belongings, kids in arms, and they were probably minutes away from being swept away by the storm surge that was obviously rising like a flash flood. And
It was a wall.
as I stepped into the water and touched the wall, I was shocked by the still live current, but I was able to grab something that the German family was frantically asking for, and I came out and we vacated, withdrew.
And then the wall came crashing on.
Yeah, the water surged in as we were exiting, and swallowed up the chalet. The next morning, after a fitful night of power going in and out and air conditioning cooling us off, and then the gusts of the wind sucking out the back pressure and making ears hurt and just flooding the room with tepid air, I could not sleep, and in the eerie silence that signaled the end of the storm, I went outside pre-dawn and saw a large group gathered at the beach. And they were standing around two stiff, lifeless forms of a father clutched to his son. And the story was, in the lull of the typhoon, they had crossed the bay only to catch the fury of the other side before they had made landfall. And so I sat down with them and grieved silently that hallowed moment. And I left a piece of my heart there. And I'm going back.
You have the heart of a fisherman because our dad is a fisherman as well.
Sort of. You would think of bass pros and hardcore salty sea captains and driving pre-dawn to dusk, lines in the water, high efficiency, high intensity. No, my dad is shameless about catching his fish. If he cannot catch fish on the rod and line, he will buy the fish and candidly saying, I'm buying with my mouth, or I'm catching with my mouth. He's catching fish. He is not a fisherman as you would expect. He goes fishing because he loves the sea and the beauty and the drama that comes with going out to sea. So he's actually someone who seeks adventure and pretty places, and it gives him permission to delight in what he considers frivolous pleasures.
And he loves watching people having fun and introducing people to new worlds.
Once again, violating the fisherman code, he'll catch a fish and hand it off and say, hey, try it, it's pulling very strongly. That's the fisherman he is. So he gets as much fun sharing the experience and giving you the opportunity to haul up a fish, especially a big one, than actually catching it himself. It's contagious.
And that I've watched you do in the past few years. Curating experiences for people, introducing people to food. Just as 2 weeks ago when you were here at Kasai, we were introducing people to wasabi shots.
You need to watch one of my shorts to introduce you wasabi shots. It'll change your life.
But that joy that you have in being in the presence in a moment is contagious. It makes people around you want to play and try new things, and that reminds me of what Dad had hoped for each one of us, that we would be the kind of people that would share that. Maybe that's part of the legacy that I hear you talking about a lot.
I accept that observation proudly. I dare say I now carry the torch of Dad being the explorer of life, the motto that he carried for much of the time I've cognitively known him. And without realizing it, I've embodied it with the way I've chosen to engage life. So that's pretty cool.
Anything else that you want to record and mark time on right now?
So the first thing that comes to mind in closure is, if you want to follow my journey, if you want to see the ups and especially the downs, things that many influencers would not show you, subscribe. I'm gonna show you when I think I'm losing my shit and think this is not gonna work out, because it counters the delirious joy I'm gonna show you. It's not always like that. If you don't have fortitude and you're not willing to learn to be courageous, that's not to watch this channel, because you might be tempted to follow and not actually earn that courage. It's brutal. As any mountain climber would tell you, it's brutal. The next thing that comes to mind is, I hope you see the people I introduce you through the camera. I'm not doing this to get more likes and subscribes, although they help, because I want to do this for a long time, especially when I become financially independent. But I want you to see the people. I want you to see them the way I do, and marvel at their resourcefulness, their ingenuity, their fragile hope, the candle flickering in the wind. Some of these people have been in depression for a long time and thought they needed to end the pain. But they kept going and found a sobriety and hope where it should not exist. There's a young woman I'm talking to now who, if she does not make payment on her college degree, which is, her payments are in arrears, she loses all of her degree. And I got the note a few hours ago that she went through the deadline without being able to pay it, and she's heartbroken. And add to that, she's in excruciating pain because she doesn't have the sufficient dental care and to buy painkillers, let alone fix her teeth or pull them when they're ready. And she tells me this, crushing my heart, wanting to help in some way financially. And she says, no, just telling another human has brought me enough relief. I'm good.
Sobering.
And her smile is incandescent, and her hope is infectious. I will bring you these stories because I think our world just needs more of them.
Joe, before we close, do you have a response to this interview?
No.
So, thank you so much, Lu-Shien, for being here, telling your story in real time. We will be following you through your travels. We wish you all the best, and we'll be cheering you on from different parts of the world. This is Lu-Shien Tan with Q's Blue World signing off with You've Got to Meet Lu-Shien Tan.
And I will drop a link in the description so that you can follow my other YouTube channel, Over Traveled, where I will post said stories of the people I meet. See you soon.